Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I did not have a clean tumbler today or iced coffee, so I have some iced strawberry basil green tea. It's a good time in my Kingdom of the Wicked mug. Cute mug. So today's video is going to be my August TBR. And for this month, we're gonna do YA fantasy, mostly older YA fantasy that has been like on my backlist or hyped or not very many people have talked about. But there will be a smattering of other well-known ones that I just haven't read that I need to get to. So we've talked about this challenge on my channel before, and in June, I spent a month reading fantasy romance, and it was fun, but I got kind of sick of it just because usually I sprinkle those in and I don't read those a lot. Or I don't read them in that much volume at least. But with YA fantasy, I absolutely love YA and I absolutely love fantasy, so I think this will be a really fun challenge, especially to be able to try to dive into some of the older ones or some of the ones that I've had on my shelves for a while that I've been interested in, but just haven't made time to pick up yet. And some of them is going to be to continue series that I need to continue. Now, as you may have noticed for July, I did not do my shelf pick for July. That was simply an oversight. I just forgot to pick one. However, I am reading Blood Trader by Lynette Noni currently, and I pre-ordered the Fairy Loot edition of that book, so it will be on my Sprayed Edges shelf. So I'm just doing a preemptive strike, if you will. And we're not doing a shelf pick for this either because I wanted to pick an older one, and most of these are not old. I did pick one that has sprayed edges, but I would say is less talked about, and I will get into that when it comes up. So yeah, so I'm going to be reading an entire month of YA fantasy, and I think it's going to be a good time. I'm also going to be putting a lot of books on here, probably more than I can read, like I did for the Fantasy Romance Challenge, simply because then it gives me a little bit of leeway on picking up what I feel like reading at the moment. And also in the hopes that I can just get through a lot of them really quickly. So with all of that being prefaced, let me just tell you all the books that I'm planning on reading in August, if I can. So the first one is Heart of Thorns by Bree Barton. I've had this book for a while that I've really wanted to get to, and I've slowly collected the trilogy over time, and this premise always sounded really interesting to me, and I just need to read it, and so I decided that this would be something I could get to in August as part of my backlist and see if I like it, and then I could potentially binge the trilogy. Stephanie Garber blurbed it on the back, how exciting. And if I remember the synopsis of this correctly, she is in a line of hunters who hunt these people that have magic, and they're seen as evil and scary. And her father are hunters, and so she wants to become a hunter herself, but her father decides that that is not her fate. And instead, she will marry a prince, and this is not what she wants her life to become. So she decides to plan an escape, and while she's doing this, she discovers that she has magic and is kind of warring inside herself because magic is seen as evil. So she not only has magic, but she's also a huntress. And the people with magic have killed her mother, and so she runs away to kind of figure out what's going on, and then the more truths she uncovers, the more dangerous it becomes. So it sounds like something I would really like, and the little like catchphrase on the front says, "Trust your heart even if it kills you." And yeah, it just sounds fun. So I'm hoping to get to this. The next one I'm planning on reading is Escaping Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. This is book 3 in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, and I absolutely love Stalking Jack the Ripper, and I just need to continue the series. It just needs to happen. So this is, like I said, book 3. So in book 3, they're going on a ship and heading to America to get into their next investigation together, Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell. But the carnival show on the boat starts turning sinister when the women that are involved in the magic show start turning up dead, and thus they start investigating on the ship. And it sounds fantastic, and I can't wait to read it. The next one that I wanted to read is Truthwitch by Susan Denard. This is book 1 in the Witchland series, and I started this a while ago trying to read it, and it just got away from me and became like one of my pile of shame type situations where I picked it up, I was liking it, but then I set it down and didn't pick it up again. And I would like to finish it this time. I didn't get very far into it. I'm not even sure. Yeah, I didn't even get 100 pages in last time, but this is a story that just sounds like something I would really, really enjoy. And so I would really like to get into it. And so this is the Witchlands, where when you're a witch, there's a lot of different abilities you can have. And Safia, this main character, is a truth witch, which means she can tell when people are lying, which you can imagine politically is a very coveted power. And so she's in hiding until a blood witch catches her scent, and when a blood witch catches your scent, they can track you no matter where you go. And so she ends up on the run, and that's just kind of how the story goes as far as I know. So it sounds like something I would really love. I have the whole series at the moment that's come out, so I really need to get into this because I think I'll really love it. And you know, this is one of those older YA series that people talk about, so I would like to get to know it. The next one that I've been very interested in, but haven't heard a lot of people talk about, is Bled by Ellie Blake. This is book 1 in the Blood saga, and it's just 3 books. And it always sounded really interesting to me, so hopefully I can get to this. The front of it says, "The reign of ice must end." And Ruby is a fireblood, and they are in hiding from the cruel Frostblood class until her mother is killed, saving her life, and the rebels demand that she helps them overthrow the king. She agrees and starts training with the rebels until she is kidnapped by the Frostbloods and forced to compete in a tournament. And this tournament pits the Fireblood people against the Frostblood champions. So it sounds really interesting and something that I would really enjoy, so hopefully this is done well. And yeah, it just sounds good. The next one is definitely a long time coming, and that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rodgerson. I have heard great things about Margaret Rodgerson and yet have still never read one of her books, even though I think I have all of them. And so when I was thinking about which one to start with, I decided to pick up Sorcery of Thorns first, because as far as I know, it's a magical library, and that sounds great. So yeah, from what I know about this book, she works in a magical library and she wants to protect the books. And if the books get out or something happens, they will turn into monsters. And this ends up happening, and she is blamed for the books turning into monsters. And so she teams up with a sorcerer who in this world are seen as evil to clear her name and figure out who was doing this to the library. So it sounds magical and kind of swashbuckling and fun and just absolutely magical. If you've ever watched The Page Master, that movie, it kind of gives me those vibes, except not as 90s creepy. So I think I will really, really love this, and I've just been putting it off and not reading it, so I need to read it. The next one that I would like to read is The Girl of Fire and Thorns by Ray Carson. There's a lot of thorns in this video. And this little tagline on the back says, "Once a century, one person is chosen for greatness." And Eliza is a character that she's always kind of felt powerless, and she's sent to marry this king who needs her to be the chosen one for his people, but she doesn't know if she is the chosen one or if she can become that, and she feels like she can't do anything. But he's not the only one that's hunting her. There's also these people with dark magical powers that are hunting her, and she may fulfill this prophecy, and if she does fulfill the prophecy, she will be the hope that her kingdom needs, if she doesn't die young, because most of the chosen do. And it sounds vague, but actually really great, and so I hope to be able to get into this. This is book 1 in a trilogy, I believe. There's also a 4th book. I haven't figured out if it's like book 4 in this series, or if it's set after the events of this series, or if it's a prequel. But as far as I know, there's 3 books, and this has been on my mind for a while, and I've been wanting to get to it, so I need to do this one as well. I think this one's also a little bit older. Wow, this came out in 2011 originally. I did not know that. So this may be one of the older ones, and the little summary says, "A fearful 16-year-old princess discovers her heroic destiny after being married off to a king of a neighboring country in turmoil and pursued by enemies seething with dark magic." So yeah, this one's been around for a while, so hopefully I can get to this. This next one is a little bit newer, but I'm still very interested to see what this book is about, and it is The Queen's Assassin by Melissa de la Cruz. And from what I remember of this, the queen has an assassin, and he employs a girl to kind of be his apprentice, and he's teaching her all of these ways, but then he kind of finds out along the way that maybe the queen is keeping secrets and not telling him things. But the problem is that he's magically bound to her until he sees his mission through, and so that poses a problem. So as the assassin and apprentice start uncovering this like web of lies, it gets a lot more complicated. And it sounds pretty interesting, and this is book 1 in a duology, and I have book 2 up there. So hopefully I can get to this and figure out what this is about, because the cover is so cool and it just sounds so intriguing. Yeah. The next one I would love to get to, because I've been kind of intrigued by this book for a while, but haven't really heard anyone talk about it, and that is The Book Jumper by Mctildeglazer. I think that's how you pronounce her name. So from what I've understand of this book is the girl Amy and her mother are leaving Germany to go to her mother's childhood home in Scotland. And when she arrives there, her grandmother demands that she reads while she's staying in Scotland, but not in the usual way. So Amy is a book jumper, which is a magical ability that allows her to leap into stories and interact with the worlds and the people and characters inside the stories, which sounds so cool. But with that, her new power also brings danger, as things keep coming to the surface about some thefts of objects and things in the books that she's visiting. So it sounds like a really awesome premise of you being able to jump into story. I feel like that's everybody's dream as a reader. So it sounds like a really interesting premise, and I hope that it's executed well, and very curious about this, and I've been wanting to get into it for a while. The next book that's a little bit newer and also has sprayed edges is The Bright and the Pale by Jessica Rubinowski. This was a fairy loot book. It's a very pretty book, and it is book 1 in a duology, and I haven't read it yet, and I really need to get to it. Not only because it has sprayed edges, but because it sounds cool. And I do not remember a thing about this book, so I need to look at the summary. So from what I'm gathering, 17-year-old Valeria is one of the only survivors of the Great Freeze, which is a dark magical hold on this mountain that has encapsulated everything she's known and loved, including all of her family and friends, in a sheet of ice. And ever since this happened, she's been on the run from the Tsar, who's determined to imprison anyone who has escaped. So she ends up finding this thieves guild and kind of finds her little family there, and finds a best friend, Alec, who ends up being killed, or so she thinks. He's actually being held prisoner, and so she kind of is getting this team of people to help break him out or buy his freedom. And so she starts leading an expedition through the mountain that claimed her family, except something sinister slumbers at the heart of the mountain. And apparently this is inspired by Russian folklore and sounds scary and dangerous and cold and really fun. So I'd like to get to this, especially because it's been on my shelf for a while now and would be a part of my Sprayed Edges challenge. That would be cool. So yeah, it sounds interesting. Let me know if you've read this book because I'm curious. Another book that I would love to read, and it's not even a specific book, so let me explain. This author has been one that I've been really curious about. I think I have 3 of her books, at least 3 of her books right now. And I've heard great things about her stories and herself as an author, and I just really need to read one of her books. And when I was sitting down trying to decide which one I wanted to read, I just eventually sat back and was like, you know what? I don't have to pick which one I want to read. I'm just gonna say I want to read one of this author's works this month. So, Tricia Levenseller is one that's been on my TBR for a long time. I have never read any of her books, but I have 3 of them. I know there's more, and I really need to read one of them at least. So, one of her books I'm planning on reading this month. If you would like to give me suggestions on which one to start with, I know she has Daughter of the Pirate King, Warrior of the Wild, Blade of Secrets, and The Shadows Between Us. So I'm kind of up for anything. I might just play it as a mood read kind of thing because that helps me. I am a mood reader, and decide to pick one up when I want to and which one that is. But if you have any recommendations for me that you think I would enjoy, please leave them in a comment down below because I would love to know what you guys think and figure out which one I want to read. But I would love to read something from this author because I've heard so many good things about her and I haven't read anything yet. So I really need to read something from Tricia Levenseller. And the last book that I would like to read in August, because let's see if we can get through all of these books in general, is These Twisted Bonds by Lexi Ryan. I know this is a new release. This actually comes out Tuesday, which today is Sunday, and it comes out July 19th, so Tuesday. And I found it early at my Barnes & Noble. I've pre-ordered my Fairy Loot edition of this to match my Fairy Loot edition of These Hollow Vows, but it's not going to come until well after this book is released, and I really want to know what happens because this is the last book in the duology, so I went ahead and grabbed a copy of it, and I just want to know what happens. So this, like I said, is book 2 in the These Hollow Vows duology. Can't tell you what this is about because it would ruin everything in the first book. The first book is following Abriella, Bree, as her sister is kidnapped by the Fae, and so she goes into the Fae lands to try to find her. And as she tries to find her sister, she ends up in this court politics where the king of the Unseelie court demands that she steals several things, including the prince's heart, in order to get her sister back. And so she kind of enters the Seelie court to try to win the prince's heart and go through this like bridal competition type thing. It's kind of like The Bachelorette, but less intense. And ends up uncovering secrets from both courts and trying to figure out what is right, what is wrong, and ultimately save her sister. And this is the second one, and I really want to know how the story wraps up, so I would like to get to this as well. So that is all of the books that I would hope to read in August. This is very ambitious. We'll see how far I can get, but I'm really excited about this. This sounds like a lot of fun. I love reading YA fantasy, and some of these I've been wanting to get to for a really long time, so I'm happy they're on my TBR. It was also really difficult to narrow this many books down because when I first started writing this, I was like, oh, Fallen Kingdoms and like all of these different things. And I had a list of like 22 books and I was like, I can't read 22 books in a month. So I narrowed it down to this and this is what we're going with. But I'm sure I could definitely do this challenge in the future and still have a lot of fun and have plenty to read. But as for now, that is it for today's video. But again, please comment down below which Tricia Levenseller book you think I should read this month and what you guys are planning on reading this month. But as for now, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.